Chapter 1. The Festive Summons. The snow had begun to fall in earnest over London, soft and silent as a thief's footstep, when Hercule Poirot received the letter. It arrived on the morning of the 21st of December, delivered by a liveried footman who stood dripping on the mat of Poirot's Whitehaven Mansion's flat, his cheeks flushed from the cold, and something that might have been excitement. Poirot, wrapped in a dressing-gown of burgundy silk and seated before a modest fire, accepted the envelope with the mild curiosity he reserved for anything that interrupted his morning cocoa. The paper was thick, cream-coloured, and sealed with crimson wax impressed by a crest. An angel with wings outspread, holding a star in one hand and a sword in the other. Beneath the crest, in elegant copperplate, were the words, "Angelwood Manor, Northumberland." "Mon Dieu!" Poirot murmured, turning the envelope over. "One does not receive such invitations every day." The footman cleared his throat. "Begging your pardon, sir. Lady Angelwood requests an immediate reply. The motor car will wait." Poirot's eyebrows ascended like twin question marks. "Lady Angelwood? I do not recall the acquaintance. Her ladyship said you would say that, sir. She also said to tell you the matter concerns the Christmas angel, and that time is short." The Christmas angel. The name stirred something in Poirot's memory, something half forgotten from a newspaper paragraph years ago. A scandal involving a priceless relic and a family curse. He slit the envelope with a silver letter opener, shaped like a miniature sword. The letter was brief, written in a firm feminine hand. "My dear Monsieur Poirot, I require the services of the greatest detective in Europe. A theft is imminent, perhaps worse. The Christmas angel must not fall into the wrong hands. Come to Angelwood Manor before the 23rd. The snows will close the road soon. Bring no one, tell no one. Your discretion is my only hope. Yours in urgency, Evelyn Angelwood." Beneath the signature, in smaller script, "P.S. The angel has begun to sing again." Poirot folded the letter with precision, his mind already turning like the delicate gears of a Swiss watch. The Christmas angel, he recalled now. A Renaissance pendant of gold and sapphire, shaped like a winged figure, said to have been blessed by a pope and cursed by a witch in the same century. For 300 years it had hung in the private chapel of the Angelwood family, appearing only at Christmas midnight mass. The last time it had been displayed in 1919, the then Lord Angelwood had died of a seizure within the hour. Since then, it had been locked away, and now it sang. Poirot rang for George, his valet, who appeared with the promptness of a well-trained retriever. "Pack for a week in the country, mon ami. Warm garments, woolens, and the grey overcoat with the astrakhan collar. We depart within the hour." George's face remained impeccably blank. "Very good, sir. Shall I inform Miss Lemon that you will be unavailable?" "Tell her I am summoned by an angel," Poirot said, permitting himself a small smile. "She will understand." The motor car was a stately Rolls-Royce Phantom, its silver lady mascot veiled in snowflakes. The chauffeur, a taciturn Northumbrian named Briggs, held the door while Poirot settled into the back seat amid furs and hot water bottles. The journey north took the better part of the day, the roads narrowing from motorways to lanes to mere tracks between hedgerows heavy with snow. As dusk fell, the landscape became a monochrome etching. White fields, black trees, the occasional yellow glow of a cottage window. Poirot dozed, lulled by the rhythmic swish of the windscreen wipers. He dreamed of angels, not the serene creatures of Renaissance paintings, but something older. Wilder, with eyes like winter stars, and voices that could shatter glass. he woke to the crunch of gravel under tires. The car had stopped before a pair of wrought-iron gates flanked by stone pillars. Each pillar bore a carved angel, wings folded, faces weathered by centuries of rain and frost. Beyond the gates, a drive wound upward through parkland to a house that seemed to grow out of the hillside itself. Angelwood Manor, built of dark stone and older than the Reformation, its chimneys already breathing smoke into the twilight. Briggs opened the door. "Welcome to Angelwood, sir. Mind the ice." Poirot stepped out, his patent leather shoes slipping slightly on the frozen gravel. The cold was immediate and shocking, a blade against the throat. He drew his coat closer and looked up at the house. Every window blazed with light, as though the manor were determined to hold back the night with sheer illumination. Somewhere within, a clock struck 6. The front door opened before he reached it. A woman stood framed in the rectangle of gold, tall, silver-haired, dressed in black velvet that made her skin appear translucent. Her eyes were the pale blue of glacier ice. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, extending a hand gloved in black lace. "I am Evelyn Angelwood. You came, I dared not hope." Poirot bowed over her hand with courtly grace. "Madame, when an angel sings, even Hercule Poirot must listen." Her smile was wintry. "Come inside before you freeze. The others are assembled. Dinner in an hour, but first tea and the beginning of explanations." She led him into a hall that smelled of beeswax and evergreen. A Christmas tree soared to the rafters, hung with crystal icicles and real candles that flickered like captive stars. Beneath it, wrapped gifts spilled across a Persian rug in riotous colour. Somewhere, a gramophone played in dulci jubilo, the notes thin and cheerful against the vastness of the stone. Servants took Poirot's coat and hat. Lady Angelwood guided him past suits of armour and ancestral portraits, whose eyes seemed to follow their progress. They entered a small sitting room panelled in oak, where a fire roared in a hearth carved with scenes of the Nativity. A tea-tray waited, Sèvres porcelain, scones still steaming, a silver pot that breathed bergamot and orange peel. Poirot accepted a cup. "You spoke of a theft, madame, and of singing." Lady Angelwood poured for herself, her movements precise. "The Christmas angel is a pendant, as you may know. Gold, sapphires, a single pearl for the tear it is said to weep each midnight of December 24th. It has hung in our chapel since 1588. My husband, God rest him, believed it protected the family. I believe it destroys us." She set down the teapot. "3 nights ago I heard it. A sound like glass bells, coming from the chapel. The door was locked, the key on my chatelaine. Yet the sound grew louder until the dogs began to howl. When I opened the door—" She stopped, her hand trembling slightly. "The pendant was glowing. Actually glowing, Monsieur Poirot. And the pearl, it was wet." Poirot sipped his tea, his eyes never leaving her face. "You fear someone intends to steal this object?" "I fear someone already has a plan. The house is full for Christmas, family, old friends, a few strangers. Any one of them could be tempted. The angel is worth a king's ransom on the black market, quite apart from its other properties." "Other properties?" Lady Angelwood leaned forward. "There is a legend. Whoever possesses the angel at the stroke of Christmas midnight will receive a boon, or a curse. The choice is not theirs. In 1642, my ancestor used it to save the estate from Cromwell's troops. He died bankrupt within the year. In 1815, another prayed for victory at Waterloo. His only son was killed the same day. The angel gives, but it takes more." Poirot set his cup in its saucer with a delicate click. "And you wish me to prevent a theft?" "I wish you to prevent a tragedy. The singing has begun. That means the angel is restless. It always sings before it changes hands. A gong sounded somewhere in the depths of the house, deep and sonorous. "Dinner," Lady Angelwood said, rising. "Come, you must meet the others, and Monsieur Poirot." She paused in the doorway, her face suddenly fierce. "Whatever you discover, whatever you suspect, do not trust the snow. It hides footprints, but it also hides graves." She left him to follow, her black skirts whispering over the stone like the wings of a crow. Poirot adjusted his tie, smoothed his moustaches, and stepped into the corridor. Somewhere above, a clock began to chime the quarter hour. He counted the strokes, 7, 8, 9, and felt the familiar tingle at the base of his skull that told him the game had begun. The Christmas angel was singing. And Hercule Poirot, for all his love of order and symmetry, had never been able to resist a song. Chapter 2. Snowbound Arrival. The dining room at Angelwood Manor was a cavern of polished mahogany and candlelight, where shadows danced like uninvited guests on the walls, adorned with tapestries of medieval hunts. Hercule Poirot entered behind Lady Evelyn Angelwood, his polished shoes silent on the Aubusson carpet. The air was thick with the scents of roasting goose, mulled wine, and the faint underlying mustiness of a house that had stood against centuries of winters. A long table stretched before them, set with silver and crystal that caught the firelight from the massive hearth. Around it sat a dozen figures, frozen in mid-conversation as they turned to regard the newcomer. Lady Angelwood's voice cut through the hush like a knife through silk. "My dear guests, allow me to introduce Monsieur Hercule Poirot, the renowned detective from Belgium. He has graciously accepted my invitation to join us for the holidays." Poirot inclined his head, his egg-shaped cranium gleaming under the chandelier. "Enchanted, mesdames et messieurs. It is the season of goodwill, no? And what better place to spend it than in such distinguished company?" There were murmurs of welcome, tinged with curiosity. Lady Angelwood guided him to a seat at her right, between a portly gentleman with a florid face and a young woman whose auburn hair cascaded like autumn leaves over an emerald gown. As servants began to serve the soup, a rich bisque of lobster, Poirot allowed his gaze to sweep the table, cataloguing each face with the precision of a jeweller examining gems. To Lady Angelwood's left sat her brother Sir Reginald Fitzroy, a retired colonel whose moustache rivaled Poirot's own in waxed magnificence. His eyes were sharp, his posture rigid, as if he still heard the bugles of forgotten campaigns. Next to him, his wife Amelia, a faded beauty in lavender silk, fidgeted with her napkin, her smile too bright, her glances darting. Across from them was Dr. Elias Thorne, a gaunt physician with wire-rimmed spectacles and a habit of stroking his chin as if pondering the mysteries of the human body. He had arrived from London, Lady Angelwood whispered, an old family friend specializing in rare ailments. Beside him lounged Victor Langston, a dashing American entrepreneur with a Hollywood smile and a tie pin shaped like a dollar sign. He claimed interests in antiquities, though his accent hinted at newer money from across the Atlantic. The auburn-haired woman to Poirot's right introduced herself as Clara Beaumont, Lady Angelwood's niece and aspiring novelist. Her eyes sparkled with intelligence, and she leaned in confidentially. "Uncle tells me you're a detective, Monsieur Poirot. How thrilling! I'm writing a mystery myself, set in a house just like this. Perhaps you could give me pointers?" Poirot smiled indulgently. "Ah, mademoiselle, the art of detection is not in the writing, but in the observation. The little grey cells, they must be exercised." On his other side, the portly man boomed a greeting. Reverend Harold Green, at your service, Vicar of St. Michael's down in the village. Delighted to have you, sir. Though I must say, a detective at Christmas sounds like one of those Agatha Christie yarns." Poirot's moustache twitched. He had met the authoress once or twice, but that was neither here nor there. The good Madame Christie has a way with puzzles, oui, but life, it provides its own. Further down the table sat the younger guests, Jeremy Angelwood, Lady Evelyn's nephew and heir presumptive, a lanky youth with brooding eyes and a habit of slouching that spoke of recent Oxford indolence. Beside him, his fiancée, Sophia Vale, a porcelain doll beauty with raven hair and a diamond necklace that caught the light like frost. She spoke little, but her gaze lingered on Victor Langston with what Poirot noted as undue interest. Rounding out the party were the outsiders, Madame Isolde Duval, a French medium with kohl-rimmed eyes and a cascade of scarves, invited for her reputed ability to commune with spirits, and Mr. Archibald Croft, a bespectacled antiquarian from the British Museum, whose fingers twitched as if longing to catalogue the manor's treasures. As the meal progressed, through courses of pheasant, Yorkshire pudding, and a flaming plum pudding that elicited gasps, conversation flowed like the claret. Sir Reginald regaled the table with tales of his time in India, while Dr. Thorne debated the merits of modern medicine with the Reverend Green. Clara peppered Poirot with questions about his cases, her notebook discreetly open under the tablecloth. But beneath the jollity, Poirot sensed currents, like eddies in a stream. Lady Angelwood's hand tightened on her fork when Victor Langston mentioned his interest in family heirlooms. Jeremy shot dark looks at his aunt, as if resenting her continued hold on the estate. Madame Duval, sipping her wine, murmured about auras of unrest in the house, her accent thick as burgundy. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the leaded windows. Snow piled against the panes, turning the world beyond into a white void. Briggs, the chauffeur, entered briefly to report that the roads were impassable. No one would be leaving or arriving until the thaw. "Snowbound," Lady Angelwood said with a forced laugh. "Just like in one of Clara's stories. How atmospheric!" Poirot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He had glimpsed the chapel earlier, a small stone building attached to the manor's east wing, its door barred with iron. The Christmas angel lay within, perhaps already humming its eerie tune. After dinner, the party retired to the drawing-room for coffee and liqueurs. A grand piano stood in one corner, and Sophia Vale was persuaded to play. Her fingers danced over the keys, rendering a haunting rendition of Silent Night. The room fell quiet, save for the crackle of the fire and the distant moan of the wind. Poirot accepted a brandy from a servant and settled into an armchair, observing. Victor Langston stood too, close to Sophia, his hand brushing hers as he turned the sheet music. Jeremy noticed, his face darkening. Madame Duval closed her eyes, swaying slightly, as if the music summoned visions. Lady Angelwood approached Poirot, her voice low. "You see them now, the vipers in my bosom. Anyone could be plotting." "Patience, madame," Poirot replied. "The snow isolates us, but it also traps the guilty. Hercule Poirot will watch." As the evening wore on, games were proposed, charades, then a round of ghost stories by the fire. Reverend Green began with a mild tale of a haunted vicarage, but Madame Duval seized the moment. "In my country," she intoned, "we speak of les anges déchus, the fallen angels. They whisper secrets, but demand payment in blood." A shiver ran through the room. Clara laughed nervously. "Aunt Evelyn, tell us about our own angel, the Christmas one." Lady Angelwood hesitated, then nodded, Very well, but remember, it is no fairy tale. She began the legend, how the pendant was forged in Florence for a Medici bride, blessed in Rome, then stolen and cursed by a spurned lover who dabbled in the occult. It came to England with a refugee from the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, marrying into the Angelwood line. It brings fortune, she concluded, but at a cost, and lately it has stirred. The clock struck midnight as she finished. Outside, the storm intensified, a barrage of snow against the glass. One by one, the guests retired, murmuring good nights. Poirot lingered, staring into the dying fire. In his room, a chamber with four-poster bed and tapestries of biblical scenes, he unpacked meticulously. George had included his favourite pomade and a small magnifying glass. As he prepared for bed, a soft knock sounded. It was Clara, wrapped in a shawl. "Monsieur Poirot, I couldn't sleep. I heard something, singing, like bells, from the chapel." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "Show me, mademoiselle." They crept down the stairs, the house creaking around them. The chapel door was locked, but through the keyhole, Poirot glimpsed a faint glow, and yes, a tinkling, ethereal sound, like wind chimes in a breeze. "It sings," Clara whispered, her face pale. "Indeed," Poirot said, "and so the mystery deepens." As they returned to their rooms, the snow continued to fall, sealing Angelwood Manor like a tomb. Poirot lay awake, his grey cells whirring. The arrival was complete. The trap was set. Tomorrow, the real hunt would begin. Chapter 3. The Legend Unve Biblia. The morning of December 22nd dawned white and merciless. Snow had drifted against the lower windows of Angel aesthetically pleasing Wood Manor, erasing the distinction between ground and sky. From his bedroom window, Hercule Poirot could see nothing but a blank expanse, punctuated by the black skeletons of oaks. The world had been reduced to geometry. White plains, black lines, and the occasional crimson splash of a holly berry. Poirot dressed with his customary care, dove-grey spats over patent shoes, a waistcoat of discreet silver brocade, and the grey overcoat with the astrakhan collar. George had laid out a small travelling case containing his magnifying glass, a notebook bound in green leather, and a tin of pastilles à la menthe. Thus fortified, he descended to breakfast. The dining room smelled of bacon, toast, and the sharp tang of marmalade. Only half the party had risen. Sir Reginald stood at the sideboard carving ham with military precision, while Dr. Thorne buttered toast with the absent air of a man solving differential equations. Clara Beaumont sat by the fire, scribbling furiously in her notebook, her hair pinned haphazardly with what looked suspiciously like a hatpin shaped like a dagger. Lady Angelwood entered as Poirot took his seat. She wore mourning black again, but today it was relieved by a brooch of jet carved into a tiny angel. "Good morning, Monsieur Poirot. I trust you slept." "Like a child who dreams of puzzles," Poirot replied, accepting coffee from a footman. "And you, madam?" Her smile was thin. "I do not sleep when the angel sings." Sir Reginald snorted. "Superstitious nonsense, Evelyn. The things are baubles. Worth a fortune, yes, but singing, pulleys and wires, if you ask me." Dr. Thorne looked up sharply. "Acoustics can be deceptive in old buildings, Colonel. Drafts through organ pipes." Clara closed her notebook with a snap. "I heard it again last night. Clear as a bell. Monsieur Poirot heard it too." Sir Reginald's moustache bristled. "Young ladies shouldn't be imagining things." Poirot raised a placating hand. "Imagination is the beginning of truth, mon colonel. But today we shall have facts." Lady Angelwood set down her cup. "Then let us begin. The chapel is unlocked at 10. The angel will be displayed until Christmas Eve. After breakfast, I will tell you its story, properly, with the family records." The others drifted in as they finished eating. Victor Langston impeccably tailored in tweeds that had never seen an American forest. Sophia Vale in pale blue cashmere that made her look like a snowflake. Jeremy Angelwood, unshaven and sullen, nursing a hangover and a grudge. Madame Duval appeared last, draped in layers of purple silk and smelling of patchouli. Reverend Green bustled in with apologies for oversleeping, his dog collar slightly askew. At 10 o'clock precisely, Lady Angelwood led them through corridors hung with holly and portraits whose eyes seemed to follow their progress. The chapel door stood ajar, exhaling cold air that smelled of stone and candle smoke. Inside, the space was small but exquisite, vaulted ceiling painted with faded seraphim, pews of dark oak polished by generations of knees. At the east end, behind an iron grille, hung the Christmas angel. Poirot's breath caught. The pendant was smaller than he had imagined, no larger than a man's thumb, yet it dominated the space. Gold wings spread wide, each feather chased with microscopic detail. The body was a single sapphire, deep as a winter midnight. At its heart, suspended by a thread of gold, hung the pearl, perfectly round, luminous, with a single flaw like a frozen tear. It swayed gently though there was no draught, catching the light from narrow windows and scattering it in prisms across the stone floor. A low murmur rose from the group. Victor Lang them closest, his eyes gleaming with something that might have been greed or reverence. Madame Duval crossed herself, whispering in rapid French. Jeremy stared as if the thing had personally insulted him. Lady Angelwood unlocked a small lectern beside the grille and produced a leather-bound book, its pages brittle with age. "The Liber Angeli," she said, "begun in 1588 by Sir Giles Angelwood, who brought the pendant from France." She opened it to a page illuminated with gold leaf, a drawing of the angel, surrounded by Latin text and marginalia in various hands. Sir Giles wrote, "Hoc donum a Deo et Diabolo, gift of God and devil. It sings when it chooses its bearer." Poirot leaned forward, his magnifying glass glinting. "And the mechanism of this singing?" "None," Lady Angelwood said flatly. "No wires, no pipes. The sound comes from within the pearl itself, resonance, perhaps, or something science cannot name." Dr. Thorne adjusted his spectacles. "Vibration induced by temperature change. Pearls are organic." Sir Reginald snorted again. "Poppycock!" Clara's pencil flew across her notebook. "What happened to Sir Giles?" Lady Angelwood turned the page. "He used the angel to save the estate during the Civil War. Prayed for the parliamentarians to pass us by. They did. Turned aside at the last moment. Sir Giles was knighted by Charles II at the Restoration. But within a year, his wife and all 3 sons died of the sweating sickness. He wrote, 'The angel took its tituther.'" Victor Langston spoke for the first time, his voice soft. "And the curse follows possession." "Not possession," Lady Angelwood corrected. "Exact midnight on Christmas Eve. Whoever holds it at that hour receives the boon, or pays the price." Madame Duval's voice floated from the shadows. "The spirits are restless. Last night I felt a presence, cold, ancient, it watches." Reverend Green cleared his throat. "Now see here, madame. We are Christians." Poirot raised a hand. "Let us examine facts. Madame, you said the singing began 3 nights ago. December 19th. What else occurred?" Lady Angelwood hesitated. "My husband's anniversary. He died 10 years ago. Heart attack in this very chapel, holding the angel." A silence fell, broken only by the faint creak of the pendant swaying. Sophia Vale's hand crept to her throat. Jeremy's fists clenched. Poirot stepped closer to the grille, his reflection superimposed on the sapphire like a ghost. "May I see the mechanism of the lock?" Lady Angelwood produced a key from her chatelaine. Iron, medieval, heavy. The lock was a simple tumbler, but Poirot noted fresh scratches around the key's severity hole. "Someone has tried this recently," he murmured. Victor Langston laughed too loudly. "Servants polishing?" "Servants do not use lock-picks," Poirot said mildly. Lady Angelwood closed the book. "There is more. Each bearer adds to the liber. My husband wrote, 'I asked for health, received death.'" She looked at Jeremy. "When I am gone, you will decide whether to continue the tradition." Jeremy's face twisted. "I don't want the blasted thing." Sophia touched his arm. "Darling." Outside, the wind rattled the stained glass. Snow hissed against the windows like serpeggiants. Poirot turned to the group. "A question for each of you. Where were you on the night of the 19th, between midnight and 1? Sir Reginald blustered, but Poirot's gaze was inexorable. "1 by Susan 1, they answered. Sir Reginald, in the library, reading Clausewitz. Lady Amelia, asleep, laudanum for her nerves. Dr. Villard Thorne. In his room, writing a paper on cardiac anomalies. New, Victor Langston, America, walking the battlements, admiring the architecture. Clara, in the attic, researching family ghosts. Madame Duval, conducting a séance in her room. Reverend Green, praying in the village church, caught in the snow on his return. Jeremy and Sophia, together in the music room, practicing carols. Archibald Croft, cataloguing the library's incunabula. Poirot nodded, making mental notes, alibis thin as Christmas wafers. Lady Angelwood locked the grill. The angel stays here until Christmas Eve. Guards will be posted, Victor interrupted. Guards? You suspect one of us? I suspect opportunity, she said, and greed. As they filed out, Poirot lingered. He pressed his ear to the grill. Faintly, almost imperceptibly, came the sound. A chime like distant bells, rising and falling with his heartbeat. Back in the hall, hot punch awaited. Poirot accepted a glass, but did not drink. Clara sidled up. Well, what do you think? I think, mademoiselle, that legends are like onions. Peel one layer, find another, and someone here is crying. Above them, the great clock struck 11. Somewhere in the house, a door closed softly. Footsteps echoed, then faded. The snow continued to fall, erasing the world outside. Poirot sipped his punch at last. It tasted of cloves and danger. Chapter 4. Whispers in the Hall. The afternoon of the 22nd was a study in enforced idleness. Snow pressed against every window like a living thing, erasing the horizon and turning Angelwood Manor into an island adrift in white. The telephones were dead, the drive impassable, the village a rumour. Even the dogs refused to leave their baskets by the kitchen range. Poirot, however, was never idle. After luncheon, cold, pheasant and a salad of forced greens, he requested a tour of the house under the pretext of admiring the architecture. Lady Angelwood assigned Clara Beaumont as his guide, a choice that pleased Poirot. The girl's sharp eyes and novelist's curiosity made her an excellent assistant, whether she knew it or not. They began in the West Wing, where the family portraits hung in solemn rows. Clara carried an electric torch, its beam cutting through the gloom of corridors unlit since gas had been abandoned for electricity. "Great-great-grandfather," she said, illuminating a canvas of a bewigged gentleman in scarlet. "Sir Bertram lost 3 ships to privateers and still died richer than Croesus. They say he used the angel to pray for calm seas. The fleet returned laden with Spanish gold. Then he was murdered by his own steward." Poirot's moustache twitched. A pattern emerges. The angel grants, then collects. They moved on, past the long gallery where suits of armour stood like silent sentries, past the music room where Sophia Vale had played the night before, the piano lid now closed like a coffin, past the library, its door ajar, revealing Mr. Archibald Croft bent over a folio, spectacles fogged with concentration. In the servants' passage behind the kitchen, Clara paused. "This is where the real house lives," she whispered. The corridor was narrow, whitewashed, smelling of coal and damp. Copper pans gleamed on hooks. A scullery maid polishing silver looked up startled, then bobbed a curtsy. Poirot noted the back stairs, steep, uncarpeted, leading to the upper floors. "These connect to the guest bedrooms?" Clara nodded. "And the chapel wing. The maids use them to lay fires before dawn." Convenient, Poirot thought, for maids and for thieves. They emerged into the main hall as the grandfather clock struck 3. Tea was being served in the drawing-room. Scones, damson jam, a silver kettle hissing on a spirit lamp. Most of the party had gathered. Victor Langston stood by the fire, warming his hands. Madame Duval reclined on a chaise longue, a lace handkerchief pressed to her forehead. Reverend Green helped Lady Amelia to a chair, her face pinched with what might have been neuralgia or fear. Poirot accepted a cup from Clara and took a position near the window, where he could observe without being observed. Outside, the snow had eased to a gentle fall, but the drifts were already waist-high. No footprints marred the lawn yet. Conversation was desultory. Sir Reginald complained about the wireless being silent. Dr. Thorne speculated on the effects of isolation on the human psyche. Jeremy Anglewood slouched in an armchair, staring into his tea as if it held the secrets of the universe. Then, abruptly, the lights flickered, once, twice. The room plunged into shadow for a heartbeat before the bulbs steadied. A collective gasp rose. "Generator," Lady Anglewood said calmly. "The storm plays havoc with the lines." But Poirot noticed Madame Duval sit bolt upright, her eyes wide. "It is here," she hissed. "The presence, cold, colder than the snow." Victor laughed, but it sounded forced. "Draught from the chimney, madame. Nothing more." Clara set down her cup. "I felt it too, like someone walking over my grave." Poirot said nothing, but his gaze swept the room. A small object lay on the carpet near the hearth, a silver thimble, glinting. He stooped to retrieve it, turning it in his fingers. Engraved inside the rim, "C.B." "Yours, mademoiselle?" he asked Clara. She frowned. "I don't sew. That's Aunt Amelia's. She's always losing thimbles." Lady Amelia looked up, startled. "Why, yes. I had it this morning. Must have dropped from my work-basket." Poirot pocketed the thimble. A small thing, but small things were the breadcrumbs of crime. At 4 o'clock, the party dispersed to dress for dinner. Poirot lingered, examining the fireplace. The hearth was wide, the chimney soaring into darkness. He ran a finger along the stone, clean, no soot. Someone had swept it recently. Clara reappeared, changed into a gown of moss-green velvet. "Walk with me to the chapel. I want to check the angel before dark." Poirot agreed. They took the main corridor, boots echoing on flagstones. Halfway there, a door opened and Jeremy Anglewood stepped out, coat unbuttoned, hair dishevelled. "Going to gawk at the family curse," he sneered. "Waste of time. It's just a bauble." Clara bristled. "It's our heritage." "Your funeral," Jeremy muttered, and strode past them towards the library. The chapel was colder than before, the air thick with the scent of extinguished candles. The angel hung motionless behind its grille, the pearl dull in the failing light. Clara shivered. "It's not glowing," she said, disappointed. Poirot approached the lock. The scratches he had noted earlier were joined by fresh ones, definite tool marks. He produced his magnifying glass. "Someone has been busy." A soft sound behind them. Fabric brushing stone. They turned to see Sophia Vale in the doorway, wrapped in a white fur coat, cheeks pink from the cold. "I was looking for Jeremy," she said breathlessly. "Have you seen him?" Clara's eyes narrowed. "In the library 5 minutes ago." Sophia hesitated, then smiled too brightly. "Thank you." She vanished as silently as she had come. Poirot's gaze returned to the lock. "Mademoiselle Vale wears perfume, gardenia. I smell it here, faint but unmistakable." Clara's eyes widened. She was in the chapel? Or someone who borrowed her scent? They left the chapel and parted in the corridor. Clara to her room, Poirot to his. But instead of ascending the main staircase, he slipped into the servants' passage. The back stairs were dim, lit only by a single bulb. He climbed slowly, counting steps. On the first landing, he paused. A faint glow emanated from beneath the linen cupboard, according to the brass plate. Inside, someone moved. Poirot pressed his ear to the wood. A man's voice, low and urgent. "Midnight tomorrow. The storm will cover everything. You have the duplicate key?" A woman's reply, muffled. "Yes, but Jeremy suspects." The bulb flickered. Poirot stepped back into shadow as the door opened. Victor Langston emerged, adjusting his tie. Behind him, Sophia Vale smoothed her skirt, her face flushed. They did not see Poirot. They descended the main stairs, laughing softly, as if sharing a secret joke. Poirot waited until their footsteps faded, then continued to his room. George had laid out evening clothes and a small revolver Poirot had not requested. George's idea of country precautions. "Any excitement, sir?" the valet asked. "Enough to keep the little grey cells humming," Poirot replied. He changed quickly, then sat at the writing desk to make notes. Thimble found far from owner. Lock tampered with, twice. Gardenia in chapel. Langston and Miss Vale in linen cupboard. Planning. Jeremy's hostility? Motive? He underlined the last twice. Dinner was a tense affair. The goose was overcooked, the conversation brittle. Sir Reginald drank too much port and began arguing with Dr. Thorne about the ethics of euthanasia. Madame Duval claimed to have received a message from the other side, warning of betrayal. Reverend Green countered with a sermon on the wages of sin. Poirot ate sparingly, watching. Sophia's hand trembled as she passed the salt to Victor. Jeremy's eyes were bloodshot. He had been drinking in the library. Lady Angelwood's gaze flicked constantly to the windows, as if expecting rescue or invasion. After the meal, the party adjourned to the long gallery for charades. Poirot excused himself, claiming a headache, and slipped away. He had a rendezvous with the chapel. The house was quiet, the servants retired. Moonlight filtered through high windows, turning the gallery into a chessboard of silver and black. Poirot moved like a shadow, his rubber-soled evening shoes silent. The chapel door stood ajar. Inside, a single candle burned on the altar. The grille was open, the Christmas angel was gone. Poirot's heart thudded once, then steadied. He approached the empty hook. On the floor lay a scrap of white fur, mink matching Sophia's coat, and beneath it a single pearl earring, its clasp broken. He picked up the earring, turning it in the candlelight. Footprints led from the grille to a side door that opened onto the cloister. Small prints, a woman's. They disappeared into the snow. Poirot closed the grille, pocketed the evidence, and extinguished the candle. Somewhere in the house, a clock struck 11. The hunt had truly begun. As he returned to the main hall, He passed the library. The door was closed, but light seeped beneath it. Voices, angry, low. "Jeremy, I know what you're planning, you American bastard." Victor, cool. "Careful, boy. Some things are worth more than your inheritance." A crash, glass shattering. Poirot hesitated, then continued upstairs. Let them fight. The angel was already singing its siren song. In his room, he locked the door and examined the earring under his reading lamp. The pearl was flawless, except for a tiny scratch on one side. He compared it to the thimble. Same silver mark. Asprey, London. Connections, always connections. Outside, the wind rose again, howling like a banshee. Snow tapped the window like impatient fingers. Poirot sat in the dark, the earring in one hand, the thimble in the other. Somewhere in Angelwood Manor, the Christmas angel was no longer safe. And Hercule Poirot, for the first time in many years, felt the thrill of a chase where the quarry might bite back. Chapter 5. The Midnight Carol. The discovery of the empty grill burned in Poirot's mind like a coal in the dark. He did not raise the alarm. Not yet. Instead, he returned to his room, locked the door, and laid the mink scrap and the broken earring on the blotter beside the silver thimble. 3 small objects, yet they spoke volumes. He took a fresh page in his green notebook and wrote in his neat slanted hand, "Evidence fur from Sophia Vale's coat, found beneath empty hook. Pearl earring, Asprey, clasp snapped, scratch on pearl. Thimble, Lady Amelia, Asprey, found in drawing room, far from owner. Lock tampered twice, fresh scratches tonight. Footprints, small female, from chapel to cloister, lost in snow. Questions, who opened the grill? Where is the angel now? Why no cry of theft?" He underlined the last twice. A thief who steals in silence and leaves no triumph is either very clever or very frightened. At 11:30, the house settled into the hush that precedes midnight in old manors. Clocks ticking, floorboards cooling, the wind prowling the eaves like a restless cat. Poirot extinguished his lamp, donned a dark dressing gown, and slipped into the corridor. The carpet swallowed his footfalls. He carried no light. Moonlight through the high windows was enough. The chapel door stood closed now, the lock re-engaged. Poirot knelt, examined it with his glass. The tumblers had been forced again, crudely this time, the scratches raw. Whoever returned the grill had been in haste. He straightened, ears straining. From the east wing came the faint, unmistakable chime of the angel. 3 crystalline notes, then silence. It was inside the house. Poirot followed the sound, past the long gallery, down a narrow passage that smelled of cedar and candle wax. The music grew louder, threading through the air like silver wire. He reached a baize door, the servant's domain, and eased it open. The kitchen was vast, copper pans glinting in the dying glow of the range. A single candle burned on the deal table. Around it stood 3 figures. Clara Beaumont in a wool dressing gown, Reverend Green clutching a poker, and Briggs the chauffeur, coatless, his shirt sleeves rolled. They turned as one. Clara's face was white. "You heard it too," she whispered. Poirot stepped inside. "The angel sings within walls. Where?" Briggs jerked his head toward the scullery. "Pantry, sir. Came from there not 2 minutes ago." They moved as a silent quartet. The pantry door was ajar. Inside, shelves of preserves and hams loomed in the dark. On the lowest shelf, half hidden behind a crock of pickled onions, lay the Christmas angel. It glowed with its own cold light, the sapphire body pulsing faintly. The pearl tear wept a single droplet that hung, trembling, never falling. And it sang, soft, relentless, a carol in a minor key that Poirot recognized, Coventry Carol, the lament of slaughtered innocents. Reverend Green crossed himself. "Lord preserve us!" Clara reached out, then snatched her hand back. "It's warm, like skin." Poirot lifted the pendant with a linen napkin. The chain was intact, the clasp unbroken, no sign of damage, yet the lock had been forced twice. He wrapped it carefully and tucked it into his pocket. "Someone placed it here," he said. "A game, perhaps, or a warning." Briggs cleared his throat. "Begging your pardon, sir, but the back door to the yard was unbolted, snow blown in, footprints, but the wind scoured them already." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then we have a visitor who comes and goes like a ghost." They returned to the kitchen. Poirot set the angel on the table. Its glow illuminated their faces in eerie blues. Clara spoke first. "Why hide it in the pantry? If someone wanted to steal it, they'd be gone." "Exactly, mademoiselle. This is not theft, this is theatre." Reverend Green frowned. "A prank?" "Or a rehearsal," Poirot said. "Tomorrow is Christmas Eve. The true performance approaches." He questioned them swiftly. Clara had been unable to sleep, had come down for warm milk. Green heard the singing from his room above the stables and fetched Briggs. None had seen another soul. Poirot nodded. "Return to your beds. Say nothing. At breakfast, the angel will be discovered missing from the chapel. Panic will ensue. We will watch who panics and who does not." He extinguished the candle. In the dark, the angel's glow faded, as though it too retired for the night. Dawn on the 23rd was a sullen grey. Snow had ceased, but the sky hung low, promising more. Poirot rose early, dressed with particular care. Charcoal suit, white waistcoat, a tie-pin shaped like a tiny key, and descended to the chapel before the house stirred. The grille hung open, exactly as he had left it. The mink fur and earring remained where he had placed them, half concealed beneath the prayer cushion. He added a fresh detail. A single white feather, plucked from his own pillow, laid across the empty hook. A trap for the curious. At 8 o'clock, the breakfast gong sounded. The dining room filled slowly, faces heavy with sleeplessness. Lady Angelwood entered last, her black gown severe, the jet angel brooch pinned like a warning. Conversation was subdued until Victor Langston, buttering toast with theatrical calm, remarked, "Quiet night, everyone. No ghostly visitations." Madame Duval shuddered. "I dreamed of wings, black wings beating against my window." Jeremy snorted. "Probably bats in the belfry." Poirot waited until coffee was poured, then rose with deliberate grace. "Mesdames et messieurs, I regret to inform you, the Christmas angel has been stolen." A collective gasp. Lady Angelwood's cup rattled in its saucer. "Stolen!" Sir Reginald bellowed. "When? How?" "Last night," Poirot said. "The chapel lock was forced, the pendant removed. Footprints led to the cloister, then vanished in the snow." Chaos erupted. Questions tumbled over one another. Dr. Thorne demanded to examine the lock. Sophia Vale's hand flew to her ear. Poirot noted the left lobe was bare. Lady Amelia began to weep into her napkin. Lady Angelwood silenced them with a raised hand. "Monsieur Poirot, you were engaged to prevent this, and I shall recover it," he said smoothly. "But first we search. Every room, every cupboard. Briggs will organize the servants. No one leaves the manor." The search began at 9. Poirot directed it like a general. Footmen to the attics, maids to the bedrooms, guests paired to prevent collusion. He himself took the east wing with Clara. They found nothing. No angel, no fresh mink, no second earring. But in Sophia's room, beneath the chaise longue, lay a small leather case. Inside, lockpicks, a glass cutter, and a duplicate chapel key, crudely filed from brass. Clara's eyes widened. Sophia. Or someone who wishes us to think so, Poirot murmured. At noon, the search was abandoned. The angel had vanished as completely as if it had taken wing. Luncheon was a grim affair. Accusations hovered unspoken. Jeremy and Victor refused to meet each other's eyes. Madame Duval retired with vapours. Poirot slipped away to the library. Mr. Croft was cataloguing incunabula, his fingers ink-stained. "Tell me, monsieur," Poirot asked, "the Liber Angeli, is there a record of the pendant ever leaving the chapel before?" Croft adjusted his spectacles. "Twice, in 1789, during the Gordon riots, hidden in the wine cellar. In 1919, Lord Angelwood wore it to a séance, died that night. And the singing? Always precedes removal. The pearl resonates, some say, with the bearer's heartbeat." Poirot thanked him and left. In the corridor, he met Briggs. "Sir, the pantry. Someone's been back. The crock of onions is moved, and this," the chauffeur held out a folded paper, "found wedged behind the flour barrel." Poirot unfolded it. A single line, written in violet ink, "Midnight Mass. Bring the angel, or the girl pays. No signature." The handwriting was educated, feminine. Clara, Sophia, Madame, Duval. He pocketed the note. "Say nothing, Briggs. Tonight we set the stage." The day dragged. Outside, the sky darkened early. By 4 o'clock, lamps were lit. Poirot spent the afternoon in his room, the angel wrapped in silk inside his waistcoat pocket. It had not sung since the pantry, but he felt its weight like a second heart. At 6, the party gathered in the drawing-room for mulled wine. Tension crackled. Sir Reginald had armed himself with a service revolver. Dr. Thorne dosed Lady Amelia with valerian. Jeremy drank brandy steadily. Poirot entered last, carrying a small cedar box. He set it on the piano. "Mes amis," he announced, "the angel is found." Gasps. Lady Angelwood stepped forward. "Where?" Poirot opened the box. Inside, nestled on velvet, lay a perfect replica. Gold wings, sapphire body, a cultured pearl. The real angel remained against his heart. "A decoy," he explained, "crafted in London last year by a jeweller of my acquaintance. Identical to the untrained eye. Tonight, at midnight mass in the chapel, we will use it to trap our thief." Victor Langston's smile was thin. "Clever, monsieur. But what if the thief knows the difference? Then they will reveal themselves by hesitation," Poirot said. "The true angel sings only for its chosen." He did not mention the note. Not yet. 11:30. The house was silent, every lamp extinguished save those in the chapel. Poirot had orchestrated the scene with care. The replica hung in its usual place, glowing faintly, phosphorus paint, a trick of the jewellers. The grille was locked, the key on Lady Angelwood's chatelaine. Guards were posted, Briggs at the main door, Reverend Green in the vestry, Clara hidden behind the rood screen with a whistle. Poirot himself stood in the shadows of the Lady Chapel. The real angel in his pocket, a police whistle around his neck. The clock in the tower began to strike 12. 1, 2, 3. On the 4th stroke, the side door to the cloister opened. A figure slipped in, cloaked in black, face obscured by a silk scarf. Small feet, graceful movements. Sophia! Clara! The cloak swirled, revealing a flash of white fur. The figure approached the grille, produced a key, duplicate, brass. The lock clicked. A gloved hand reached for the replica. Poirot stepped forward. "Un moment, mademoiselle, or madame." The figure spun. The scarf slipped. Madame Duval's kohl-rimmed eyes stared into his, wide with terror. "No!" she gasped. "It is not what you think." From the rood screen, Clara's whistle shrilled. Briggs burst in, lantern raised. Reverend Green appeared, poker in hand. Madame Duval crumpled. "I had to! The note! Clara would die. Poirot's voice cut like ice. The note was a forgery. Clara is safe. He produced the real angel. It blazed in his palm, singing its minor carol. But you, madame, have much to explain. Outside, the snow began again, soft as forgiveness, relentless as truth. Chapter 6. Hidden Alliances. The chapel's candle flames shivered as Madame Isolde Duval sank to her knees on the stone floor, black silk pooling like spilled ink. The replica, angel, lay in Poirot's left hand. The true pendant, warm and pulsing, rested in his right. Between them burned a single question. Why had a celebrated Parisian medium risked everything for a counterfeit? Poirot's voice was soft, almost gentle. "You will speak now, madame. The game is finished." Madame Duval's shoulders shook. "I had no choice. They have my daughter." A collective intake of breath. Clara, emerging from behind the rude screen, whistle still clenched in her fist, went pale. "Your daughter? You told us you were childless." The medium lifted her face, mascara streaking like war paint. A lie. Elise is 16. She was taken from the convent school in Rouen 3 weeks ago. The ransom note arrived the day I left for England. She fumbled in her sleeve and produced a crumpled sheet. Cheap paper, block letters in violet ink. Bring the Christmas angel to Angelwood Manor. Christmas Eve, or the girl dies. The handwriting matched the pantry note exactly. Lady Angelwood's hand flew to her throat. "You brought this danger into my house?" "I brought hope," Madame Duval whispered. "They promised to release Elise if I delivered the pendant. I thought if I could substitute a copy." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "You commissioned the replica?" "No. It was sent to me in Paris, wrapped in brown paper. No return address. A perfect duplicate, even to the flaw in the pearl. I was to swap it during the midnight mass, leave the real one in the cloister for collection." Briggs, lantern-swinging, growled, "And you believed them? Criminals don't keep promises." Madame Duval's laugh was bitter. A mother believes what she must. Poirot turned the replica in his fingers. Under the chapel's candles the phosphorus glow had faded, revealing the sapphire as merely glass, the gold as gilt, clever but not flawless. He slipped both pendants into separate pockets. "Madam, you will remain under watch until we verify this tale. Briggs, escort her to the library. Reverend Green, stay with them. Clara," he beckoned the girl closer. "You will fetch Dr. Thorne. We may need sedation." As the medium was led away, weeping silently, Poirot addressed the remaining witnesses, Lady Angelwood, Sophia Vale, who had appeared at the chapel door, white fur coat clutched tight, and Victor Langston, who lounged against a pillar as though attending the theatre. "Mesdames, messieurs," Poirot said, "the theft was never simple greed. It is abduction, and abduction requires accomplices inside this house." Sophia's hand trembled on her coat. "You can't think one of us. I think everything," Poirot interrupted, "beginning with opportunity." He produced the mink scrap and broken earring. "These were planted to implicate you, mademoiselle. Someone wished you suspected." Sophia touched her bare earlobe, eyes wide. "I lost that earring days ago, in the music room." "Convenient," Victor drawled, "or careless." Poirot ignored him. "Lady Angelwood, the chapel key on your chatelaine. How many duplicates exist?" "Only one," she said firmly, "kept in the estate office safe. Combination known solely to myself and the butler, who is in London for the holidays." "Then we have a new mystery," Poirot murmured, for Madame Duval used a third key, brass, filed by an amateur. The house was searched again, this time with ferocity. Poirot directed pairs that could not collude. "Sir Reginald with Dr. Thorne, Jeremy with Croft, Victor with Sophia. Clara remained at Poirot's side, notebook in hand. They began in Madame Duval's room, a chaos of scarves, tarot cards, and half-burned incense. Beneath the mattress lay a second note, identical paper and ink. Stage the séance tonight. Distract the household. Midnight swap. Clara shivered. She performed for us last evening. Table rapping. Ectoplasm. I thought it theatrical. It was cover, Poirot said. He lifted a small leather case from the dressing table. Inside, a collapsible rod, silk threads, a vial of luminous paint, the tools of her trade, but also of deception. In the wastepaper basket, torn into confetti, lay a railway ticket, Paris to Dover, dated December 18th. And beneath the bed, a child's handkerchief embroidered with the initial E. Poirot's face hardened. The daughter is real. The threat is real. By 2 in the morning, the search yielded more. In Victor Langston's room, hidden inside a boot, was a folded map of the manor grounds, marked with red ink at the cloister, the pantry, and a disused ice house half a mile into the woods. A dotted line led from the ice house to the main road, now buried under snow. Jeremy's room contained a half-empty bottle of laudanum and a letter in Sophia's handwriting. Meet me in the linen cupboard. V knows too much. The ink was fresh. Sophia herself, searched by Clara under Poirot's supervision, carried nothing but a prayer book and a photograph of a dark-haired girl, strikingly like Madame Duval in her youth. Elise? Clara asked. Sophia nodded, tears brimming. Isolde showed it to me yesterday. She begged me to help. I refused. At 3 o'clock, Poirot gathered the household in the library. Fire banked low, shadows leaping. Madame Duval sat in an armchair, wrists bound with silk cord, eyes swollen. Briggs stood behind her. The others formed a ragged semicircle, exhaustion etched on every face. Poirot placed the real angel on the central table. It caught the firelight and threw fractured rainbows across the ceiling. Listen carefully, he began. A child's life hangs in the balance. The kidnappers expect delivery tomorrow night, Christmas Eve. They watch the manor. They have an agent among us. Sir Reginald's revolver glinted. Name the bastard. Patience. Poirot raised a hand. First, the facts. Madame Duval was coerced. The replica was sent to her. Someone inside provided the map, the duplicate key, the distractions. Someone who knows this house intimately. He turned to Victor Langston. Monsieur, you arrived with references from a New York antiquities dealer. I telephoned him yesterday, before the lines failed. He has never heard of you. Victor's smile did not waver. A misunderstanding. Middlemen do not forge provenance for Renaissance jewels. Poirot produced a telegram from his pocket, sent via the village post office before the storm closed the roads. Langston unknown. Stop. Suspected fence for European black market. Stop. Victor's mask slipped. You can't prove. I can prove opportunity. Poirot gestured to Briggs, who laid the ice house map on the table. You marked the escape route. You met Sophia in the linen cupboard to coordinate. You planted evidence to distract. Sophia gasped. No! He forced me! Victor lunged for the angel. Sir Reginald's revolver roared. Plaster exploded from the ceiling. Victor froze, hands raised. Enough! Poirot snapped. Briggs, bind him! We have the accomplice, but not the mastermind. He turned to Jeremy Angelwood, who had been silent, face grey with brandy and rage. You, monsieur, hate the angel. You hate your aunt for clinging to it. You hate the curse that shadows your inheritance. You wrote to Sophia. V knows too much. You feared exposure, but you did not act alone. Jeremy laughed, a cracked sound. You think I'd kidnap a child for a trinket? No, Poirot said softly. You kidnapped hope. You forged the ransom notes. You sent the replica from London, using your aunt's safe combination, stolen during one of her migraines. You recruited Langston with promises of a share. You used Madame Duval's desperation as a shield. He produced the brass key from his pocket, filed in the estate workshop, your fingerprints in the metal dust, and the violet ink matching the stationery in your desk. Jeremy's defiance crumbled. I just wanted it gone. The curse, the legend, all of it. If the angel vanished, Aunt Evelyn would have to sell. I'd be free. Lady Angelwood rose, regal in her grief. You would murder a child for freedom. Not murder, Jeremy whispered. A bluff. Elise was never in danger. She's safe in Paris. My old tutor's sister is minding her. I paid them to hold her until Christmas. Poirot's voice was steel. A cruel bluff. And Langston? Langston believed it real. He wanted the angel for his buyers. I let him think he was in control. Victor snarled. You little fool. My people don't accept failure. Poirot signalled Briggs. Lock them in separate rooms. At dawn, we dig to the ice house. The girl's location is there. Jeremy will talk when the snow closes in. The house slept uneasily. Poirot did not. He sat in the library with the angel, its song now a lullaby of sorrow. Clara brought cocoa at 4. Is it over? She asked. Almost. One thread remains. He showed her the child's handkerchief, Elise's scent, lavender, the same as the sachet in Sophia's room. She knew more than she admitted. Clara's eyes widened. Sophia helped Jeremy. Perhaps, or protected him. Love makes fools, and accomplices. Outside the sky lightened to pearl. Snow had stopped. The world lay hushed, waiting. Poirot wrapped the angel in silk and returned it to his pocket. Tomorrow, he said, we deliver justice, and perhaps a miracle. The clock struck 5. Somewhere in the manor, a child's fate hung balanced between greed and redemption. Poirot closed his eyes, listening to the angel's song fade into silence. Chapter 7. The Frozen Trail. Dawn on Christmas Eve broke iron-grey and merciless. The storm had spent itself during the night, leaving a silence so complete that the creak of Angelwood Manor's timbers sounded like gunshots. Snow lay in drifts taller than a man. Every window was rimmed with frost thick as parchment. The temperature had plummeted to a degree Poy, becoming rot, had rarely endured even in his Belgian winters. At 6 o'clock he stood in the entrance hall, wrapped in his astrakhan-collared coat, scarf wound high, a pair of fur-lined gloves borrowed from Briggs. Clara Beaumont waited beside him, cheeks pink with cold and excitement, a notebook clutched like a talisman. Lady Angelwood had insisted on joining them. Her black cloak made her seem part of the shadows. Briggs carried a shovel and a storm lantern. Sir Reginald, revolver in hand, brought up the rear, moustache bristling with purpose. Jeremy Angelwood and Victor Langston were locked in separate rooms, Jeremy under Briggs's watchful eye when the chauffeur was not needed outside. Langston trussed like a Christmas goose after his attempt on the angel. Madame Duval remained sedated in the care of Dr. Thorne, her daughter's fate now the hinge on which the day turned. Poirot addressed the small expedition. We go to the ice house. Jeremy S.W. jig swears. The girl is held there, alive, well, and unaware she is a pawn. We will believe him only when we see her. The trail begins at the cloister door. They stepped into the white wilderness. Snow had drifted waist-deep against the manor walls. Briggs shovelled a path, breath pluming like a steam engine. The Clos Creatureister, once an elegant covered walk for meditating monks, was now a tunnel of ice, its arches half buried. Poirot knelt where Sophia's footprints had vanished the night of the theft. Beneath fresh powder lay a shallow trench. Someone had swept the flags clean with a branch, then allowed new snow to disguise the act. See, Poirot pointed, a careful criminal, but not careful enough. 50 yards beyond the cloister, the ground dipped into a dell where the ice house squatted. A low beehive mound of stone, half smothered in drifts, its iron door crusted with rime. The map found in Langston's boot had marked it with a red X. Briggs attacked the drift. Each shovelful rang like a bell. Sir Reginald kept watch, revolver ready, though no living thing moved in the white expanse save a single crow that wheeled overhead and vanished. Poirot examined the door. The lock, a heavy padlock, hung open, the hasp filed through. Fresh metal gleamed where the cut was made. "Last night," he murmured, "someone prepared for our arrival." Lady Angelwood's breath caught. "Elise!" Briggs heaved the door. It groaned open on frozen hinges, exhaling a breath of air so cold it burned the lungs. Steps spiraled down into darkness. The lantern revealed walls furred with hoarfrost, each footfall crunching like broken glass. At the bottom, a chamber the size exaggeration of a small crypt. Iron meat hooks glinted along one wall, relics of the days when the ice house stored game. A wooden crate served as a table. On it, a candle stub, a box of matches, a half-eaten loaf, and a child's mitten, lavender wool, embroidered with E. Clara, gasped. She was here! A narrow tunnel branched off, cut through the ice years ago to connect to the old laundry chute. Poirot's lantern picked out scuffled footprints leading into it. Small boots, and larger ones beside them. "They moved her," Sir Reginald growled. "The devils?" Poirot knelt. "Not devils. Accomplices with foresight." He pointed to drag marks in the frost. "Something heavy, perhaps a sledge. They anticipated discovery. They have taken her toward the road." They retroceded their steps. Outside, the footprints emerged from a ventilation shaft at the rear of the mound, cleverly disguised by a drift. The trail led downhill, toward the woods that bordered the estate. A snow had filled the tracks, but the shallow trench remained, a pale scar across the virgin white. Briggs shovelled furiously. The group followed in single file, breath ragged. The woods closed around them. Pines bowed under snow, bee branches snapping like bones underfoot. After 200 yards, the trench ended at a clearing where hoofprints and wheel ruts marred the snow, recent, within hours. "A sleigh," Poirot said. "They came by night, under cover of the storm." Lady Angelwood swayed. Clara steadied her. Sir Reginald scanned the trees. "Road's a mile east. If they reach it, they will not," Poirot cut in. "Look!" He pointed to a scrap of lavender wool snagged on a thorn bush. "The mittens, mate. They are close." A faint sound drifted through the trees, muffled, rhythmic. Sleigh bells. Briggs dropped the shovel and ran. The others followed, stumbling through drifts. The bells grew louder, accompanied now global by the creak of runners and the snort of horses. They burst into a narrow ride, an old logging track, and there it was. A black sleigh drawn by two shaggy ponies, a cloaked driver cracking a whip. In the back, bundled in furs, sat a dark-haired girl, Elise, gagged, eyes wide with terror. Beside her, a burly man in a sheep-grouper skin coat held a pistol to her head. "Stop!" Sir Reginald bellowed, levelling his revolver. The driver lashed the ponies. The sleigh lurched forward. Poirot's mind raced. The track curved sharply 50 yards ahead. Beyond lay a Ravut sign. If the sleigh gained speed, "Briggs, the shovel!" Poirot shouted. The chauffeur understood instantly. He hurled the shovel like a javelin. It struck the lead pony's foreleg. The animal screamed, stumbled. The sleigh slewed sideways, runners screeching, and overturned in a flurry of snow and furs. Sir Reginald fired into the air. The man with the pistol threw up his hands. Elise rolled free, scrabbling toward Clara, who caught her in a fierce embrace. Poirot approached cautiously. The driver, a local villager by his dialect, groaned beneath the slehouai. The gun-posture man surrendered his weapon without a fight. Lady Angelwood knelt beside Elise, cutting the gag with a penknife. The girl's first words were in frantic French. "Maman! Maman!" "She's safe," Poirot assured her. "You are safe." Sir Reginald bound the captors with their own reins. Briggs Wright and Nedade the Still Deepley, calming the ponies. The rescue party formed a ragged procession back to the manor. Elise carried piggyback by Clara, the prisoners stumbling ahead under revolver. By 9 o'clock they were back in the warmth of the great hall. Dr. Thorne examined Elise, cold, frightened, but unharmed. Hot broth and blankets were pressed upon her. Madame Duval, roused from sedation, wept uncontrollably in her daughter's arms. Poirot gathered the household in the drawing-eating room. Jeremy and Langston were brought down under guard. Jeremy pale and sullen, Langston smirling defiance. Poirot laid the Christmas angel on the table. It caught the firelight and sang a single, pure note. "The trail is closed," he announced. Shattering else Elise has returned. The kidnappers, hired ruffians from the village, confessed they were paid by Monsieur Langston to hold the girl until the pendant was delivered. Jeremy Angelwood provided the plan, the replica, the duplicate key. His motive, to destroy the angel and force the sale of the estate. Jeremy would not meet his aunt's eyes. "I never meant harm to the child. You meant harm to everything this family stands for," Lady Angelwood said, voice trembling with contempt. Langston shrugged. Business. The angel would fetch $500,000 in Zurich. The boy was useful." Poirot turned to Sophia Vale, who stood apart, face tear-streaked. "And you, mademoiselle?" She lifted her chin. "I knew nothing of the kidnapping. Jeremy asked me to distract Victor, to flirt, to keep him occupied. I thought it a lover's game to smuggle the angel away and sell it quietly. When I learned the truth," her voice broke, "I tried to stop it. I left the mitten as a clue." Poirot nodded. "The frozen trail began with lavender wool. You saved the child." Outside, the sun broke through for the lyre first time in days, turning the snowfields to diamond. Poirot pocket characteristic the angel. "One task remains," he said. "Midnight Mass. The angel must sing its final carol, in the chapel, under guard, with every soul present. The curse, or the blessing, will be faced openly." Lady Angelwood met his gaze. "And then Hercule Poirot will decide who is worthy to bear it." The clock struck 10. Christmas Eve had begun, and the manor held its breath. Chapter 8. Deceptive Gifts. The great hall of Angelwood Manor had never looked more festive, or more sinister. By 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve, every chandelier blazed, every candlestick flickered, and the Christmas tree rose like a pagan idol, its crystal icicles catching the light in 1,000 fractured rainbows. Servants had spent the day transforming the house. Holly garlands twined the banisters, mistletoe hung in strategic doorways, and the air was thick with the scent of cinnamon, orange peel, and roasting chestnuts. Yet beneath the tinsel lay steel. Briggs and 2 trusted footmen stood guard at every external door, shotguns broken over their arms. Sir Reginald's revolver had been replaced with a Webley from the gun-room. Dr. Thorne had prepared a medical kit in the vestry. Even Reverend Green carried a stout blackthorn walking stick that concealed a sword blade. Poirot had orchestrated the evening with the precision of a symphony conductor. Dinner was served early, turkey, cranberry, flaming plum pudding, eaten in near silence. Gifts were to be opened after midnight mass, not before. The angel would hang in the chapel until the stroke of 12, then be claimed by whoever dared to wear it. Poirot had declared that the legend must be tested openly. No more secrets, no more shadows. At 9 o'clock the party assembled in the drawing-room for mulled wine and carols. Sophia Vale played the piano. God rest you merry, gentlemen, once in Royal David's City. Her fingers steady now, her gaze fixed on Jeremy, who sat apart, wrists bound with silk cord, face gaunt. Victor Langston lounged in an armchair, ankles crossed, a smirk playing at his lips despite the rope around his torso. Madame Duval and Elise sat together on a sofa, the girl's hand clasped tightly in her mother's. Clara moved among the guests with a tray of mince pies, her novelist's eye bright with the drama of it all. Poirot stood by the fire, the real angel in his waistcoat pocket, the replica returned to the chapel grill. He had spent the afternoon in the estate office, poring over the Liber Angeli with Mr. Croft. One entry, written in 1789 by a short, terrified ancestress, had chilled him. The angel chose badly. It gave wealth and took a life. Beware the bearer who asks with greed in the heart. At 10 o'clock, Poirot clapped his hands. Mesdames et messieurs, it is time, to the chapel. They processed like a funeral cortege. Lady Angelwood at the fore, black velvet cloak sweeping the flagstones. Poirot beside her, gloved hands clasped behind his back. The prisoners flanked by Briggs and Sir Reginald, the others in pairs, Clara with Sophia, Dr. Thorne with Reverend Green, Madame Duval carrying Elise piggyback, the child's eyes wide with wonder at the candlelit corridors. The chapel was transformed. Every candelabrum blazed. The replica angel hung in its grill, phosphorus paint glowing faintly. Pine boughs scented the air. A small harmonium had been wheeled in. Clara took her place at the bellows. Reverend Green donned surplice and stole. The congregation filled the pews. 14 souls, including the bound prisoners. Poirot stood at the chancel steps, the real angel now in his hand, wrapped in white silk. Tonight, he began, voice carrying to the rafters, we end the legend. The Christmas angel will sing its carol. At midnight, one among us will wear it. The Liber records that the pendant reveals truth, boon or curse, within the hour. We will witness together. Victor Langston laughed. Superstitious rubbish. Give it to me. I'll take the risk. Jeremy's head snapped up. You'll take nothing, you— Silence, Lady Angelwood commanded. Her voice rang like a bell. Monsieur Poirot, proceed. The service began. Reverend Green intoned the Christmas Eve liturgy, his voice steady despite the surreal congregation. Carols rose. Silent night, O come all you faithful, Clara's fingers dancing over the keys. Elise's clear soprano joined her mother's contralto. Even the prisoners were silent, though Langston's eyes never left the glowing replica. At 11:45, Poirot stepped forward. He unwrapped the true angel. It blazed in his palm, sapphire and gold and pearl, the tear-droplet trembling. A collective gasp rose. The replica in the grill was suddenly dull by comparison. Poirot climbed the 3 steps to the grill, unlocked it with Lady Angelwood's key, and removed the counterfeit. He hung the real pendant in its place. The pearl wept its single tear, slowly, deliberately, hanging, never falling. The harmonium fell silent. The clock in the tower began to strike 12. 1, 2, 3. On the 4th stroke, the angel began to sing, not the faint chime of before, but a full aching carol. Coventry Carol, the lament of Rachel weeping for her children. The sound filled the chapel, resonating in bone and blood. 4, 5, 6. Poirot's gaze swept the congregation. Lady Angelwood's lips moved in prayer. Sophia clutched Jeremy's bound hand. Madame Duval shielded Elise's ears. 7, 8, 9. Victor Langston strained against his ropes, eyes greedy. "Give it to me! 10, 11. On the 12th stroke, the singing ceased. The pearl's tear fell at last, striking the stone floor with a sound like a gunshot. It shattered into 1,000 crystal fragments that glittered like stars. Silence. Poirot spoke into it. "The angel has chosen. It sings no more tonight, but the legend demands a bearer." He turned to Lady Angelwood. "Madame, the decision is yours." She stepped forward, trembling. "I have borne it all my life, in fear, in sorrow. My husband died wearing it. My brother-in-law lost his sons. I will not pass this curse to another." She reached for the pendant, then stopped. Her hand fell. "No," she whispered, "let it end." Poirot nodded. He lifted the angel from its hook. "Then I, Hercule Poirot, will bear it for 1 hour. If the curse is real, it will strike me. If it is greed that summons the curse, then I, who desire only truth, am safe." Gasps. Clara cried out, "Monsieur, no!" But Poirot was already fastening the chain around his neck. The sapphire rested cold against his throat. The pearl tear, reformed, impossibly, hung whole again. He spread his arms. "Observe, the hour begins." The congregation was herded back to the drawing-room, prisoners, guards, all. A grandfather clock was brought from the hall and set to chime the quarter hours. Poirot sat in the centre of the rug, the angel glowing against his white waistcoat. A circle of chairs surrounded him. No one spoke. 12:15. Poirot sipped coffee, calm as ever, 1:30. He adjusted his tie, smoothed his moustaches. 1:45. Clara paced. Sophia wept silently. Langston watched with predatory intensity. At 1 o'clock exactly, the clock chimed. Poirot rose, unclasped the chain, and held the angel aloft. "Nothing," he said simply. "No boon, no curse. The legend is fulfilled and broken." He turned to Lady Angelwood. "Madame, the pendant is yours to destroy or preserve, but the curse was never in the jewel. It was in the hearts of those who coveted it." She took the angel with shaking hands. "Then I choose freedom." She crossed to the fire, opened the grate, and cast the pendant into the flames. For a heartbeat, the sapphire blazed blue, then shattered. Gold melted. The pearl burst with a sound like a sigh. Nothing remained but a twist of molten metal. Jeremy buried his face in his hands. Langston cursed. Madame Duval hugged Elise fiercely. Poirot allowed himself a small smile. "And now, gifts," he clapped his hands. Servants entered bearing parcels wrapped in red and gold. For each guest, a deceptive gift, beautiful without, revealing within. For Lady Angelwood, the Liber Angeli, its final page blank, with a pen to write her own ending. For Clara, a first edition of The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, inscribed by Agatha Christie. To the novelist who lived the mystery. For Sophia, a single pearl earring, her lost one, repaired, with a note. Truth is the only match. For Madame Duval and Elise, railway tickets to Paris first class and a bank draft for a new beginning. For Victor Langston, a pair of miniature handcuffs, silver, engraved Zurich police. For Jeremy, a deed to a small cottage in the Lake District, his aunt's forgiveness, conditional on exile from Angelwood. Sir Reginald received a box of Cuban cigars. Dr. Thorne, a rare medical text. Reverend Green, a bottle of sacramental wine for future miracles. Poirot's own gift was last, a tiny envelope. Inside, a single white feather, the one he had placed in the chapel grill. On the back, in his own hand, the angel flew. The detective remained. Outside, the snow began to melt under a pale Christmas sun. The roads would open by morning. The prisoners would be taken to Northumberland police. The manor would breathe again. Poirot stood at the window, watching icicles drip like tears of relief. Clara joined him. "Is it really over?" she asked. "Over, mademoiselle. No, it is begun. You will write the story, the Christmas Angel mystery. And somewhere, a child will read it and learn that legends are only as powerful as the fear we give them." He raised his coffee cup in salute to the melting world beyond the glass. "Joyeux Noël, Clara, and to all a good night." Chapter 9. Poirot's Grey Cells at Work. The drawing-room at Angelwood Manor had become a courtroom without walls. At 2:30 on Christmas morning, the fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the Persian rug. The melted remnants of the Christmas angel lay cooling on the hearth in a twist of gold and sapphire dust. Yet every eye remained fixed on Hercule Poirot, as he stood at the centre, hands clasped behind his back, the little grey cells gleaming brighter than any chandelier. He did not pace. He did not gesture. He simply was. A small, immaculate figure in charcoal and white, the calm eye at the heart of the storm he had summoned. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, voice soft but carrying to the rafters. "The play is ended, the curtain fallen, yet one scene remains, the denouement. You have witnessed the destruction of the angel, the rescue of the child, the exposure of greed. But you have not yet heard the truth, the complete symmetrical truth that ties every knot, explains every whisper, every footprint in the snow." He turned slowly, meeting each gaze in turn. "Let us begin at the beginning, not with the singing pendant, but with a letter." He produced from his waistcoat pocket the original summons from Lady Angelwood, now creased from much handling. "Madam wrote to me on the 18th of December. She feared theft. She heard singing. But she did not write this postscript. The angel has begun to sing again." That line was added later, by another hand, in violet ink identical to the ransom notes. Lady Angelwood gasped. "I never—" "Precisely, madame. The forgery was clever, but the paper grain differed by a millimetre. Someone intercepted your letter at the village post office, added the lure, and ensured it reached me. Why? Because Hercule Poirot's presence was essential to the plan." Clara's pencil flew across her notebook. "To lend credibility." "Non, mademoiselle. To provide chaos. A famous detective in the house would focus suspicion outward, on servants, on strangers, on supernatural forces, while the true scheme unfolded within." Poirot's gaze settled on Jeremy Angelwood, bound but no longer sullen. His eyes held the dull glint of a man watching his house of cards collapse. "You, monsieur, were the architect. You hated the angel, hated the legend that shadowed your inheritance. But you were clever. You did not act alone. You needed a partner with access to the black market, with funds to hire ruffians, with the ruthlessness to kidnap a child as leverage. Enter Victor Langston." Langston smirked. "Circumstantial. No, monsieur. Documentary." Poirot produced a telegram, the one he had sent from the village before the storm. "Your New York references are forgeries. Your true employer is a Zurich syndicate specializing in ecclesiastical art. They offered you £100,000 for the angel. Enough to buy your silence, enough to ruin this family." He turned to Sophia Vale, who stood pale beside Jeremy, her repaired pearl earring glinting like a tear. "Mademoiselle, you were the weakest link, and the strongest. Jeremy confided in you. You believed his plan was merely to remove the pendant, sell it quietly, free the estate from superstition. You flirted with Langston to keep him distracted. You left the mitten in the woods as a clue when you learned of the kidnapping. But you also planted the mink fur and earring in the chapel, after the theft, to cast suspicion on yourself and thus protect Jeremy. Sophia's voice trembled. I thought if I took the blame, you would shield him. Love, mademoiselle, is a dangerous accomplice. Poirot's attention shifted to Madame Duval, cradling Elise on the sofa. Madame, your desperation was real, but not spontaneous. 3 weeks ago, you received a letter, not a ransom note, but an offer. Perform at Angelwood Manor. Bring your gift for séances. In return, a debt of 20,000 francs would be erased. Your gambling losses at Monte Carlo. You accepted. Only later did the kidnapping threaten to bind you. Madame Duval's eyes filled. They said it was a bluff. I never meant. Intentions, madame, are snowflakes. Consequences are avalanches. Now Poirot addressed the room at large. The mechanics were thus. The replica, commissioned by Jeremy in London, using his aunt's safe combination stolen during one of her migraines. Delivered to Madame Duval in Paris with instructions to swap it during the midnight mass. The singing, a simple trick, a tuning fork hidden in the chapel organ, pipes, struck by a clockwork mechanism triggered when the grille was opened. The glowing was phosphorus paint. The weeping tear, a droplet of glycerin on a thread, released by body heat. The pantry hide, a feint. The angel was placed there to be discovered by Clara and Reverend Green, proving it could be moved, thus justifying the midnight swap as the real theft. The ice house, Langston's escape route. The ruffians were to collect the pendant at the cloister, sled to the ice house, then to the road where a motor car waited. The kidnapping ensured Madame Duval's compliance. The destroyed angel, the final deception. Jeremy wanted it melted. With the pendant gone, the legend died, the estate could be sold, debts paid. Langston would blame the destruction on the curse, escape with a share of the insurance claim Lady Angelwood would file. Sir Reginald's moustache bristled. Insurance fraud on top of kidnapping, the bounder! Poirot inclined his head, but the plan had one fatal flaw. It underestimated the little grey cells. He produced the melted twist of metal from the hearth, now cooled. Observe, gold melts at 1,000 degrees Celsius, sapphire at 2,000. Yet this sapphire shattered at 700, the temperature of a Yule log. It was glass from the start. The real Christmas angel was never in danger. A collective gasp. Clara's pencil snapped in her fingers. Poirot reached into his pocket and drew forth the true pendant, intact, glowing, the pearl tear whole and luminous. I substituted it the moment Lady Angelwood cast the replica into the fire. A sleight of hand learned from a conjurer in Brussels. The angel lives. Lady Angelwood's hand flew to her heart. You tricked us, all of us. No, madame, I saved you. The legend required destruction to break the cycle of fear. But the artifact, priceless, historical, belongs to the ages, not the flames. He turned to Mr. Croft, who had remained silent throughout. Monsieur, you will arrange its transfer to the British Museum. Anonymous donation in the name of the Angelwood family. The curse ends not in fire, but in light. Croft nodded, eyes shining behind his spectacles. It will be my honour. Poirot faced Jeremy and Langston. You, messieurs, will face earthly justice. Kidnapping, conspiracy, attempted fraud. The Northumberland police arrive at dawn. The telephone lines are restored. Your accomplices in the village have already confessed. Langston spat. You think you've won, little man. My people, your people, Poirot interrupted, will disavow you. A failed operation is a liability. You are finished. He turned last to Elise, who had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder. And you, petite, will grow up knowing that angels are not in jewels, but in the courage of those who protect the innocent. The clock struck 3. Outside, the first pale hint of Christmas, dawn touched the snow. Poirot clasped his hands. And now, mes amis, the symmetry is complete. Every whisper explained, every footprint accounted, every heart revealed. The Christmas angel has sung its final carol, not of curse, but of truth. He placed the pendant in Lady Angelwood's trembling hands. Keep it safe until the museum comes, then let it go. The manor is yours, free of shadows. Clara closed her notebook with a soft thud. Monsieur Poirot, how did you know? About the glass, the tuning fork, all of it? Poirot's smile was small, satisfied, utterly Belgian. Because, mademoiselle, I listened, not to the singing, but to the silence between the notes. And in that silence, the little grey cells danced. He bowed, a courtly gesture to the room. Joyeux Noël, the mystery is solved. The rest, tea perhaps, is merely epilogue. Chapter 10. The Angel's Resolution. Christmas Day dawned with a clarity that felt almost indecent after the storm. Sunlight poured through the high windows of Angelwood Manor, turning the melting snow into rivers of diamond. Icicles wept from the eaves. The air carried the clean, mineral scent of thaw. For the first time in a week, the world beyond the gates was visible. Hedgerows, stone walls, the distant smudge of the village chimney smoke. The roads would be passable by noon. Hercule Poirot stood on the front steps, coat unbuttoned, scarf loose, breathing it in. Behind him, the great door stood open. Servants bustled with brooms and buckets, sweeping away the last of the holiday debris. The house exhaled. At 9 o'clock the Northumberland constabulary arrived, 2 sergeants in a sturdy humber, tyres crunching over grit. They took statements, loaded Victor Langston and Jeremy Angelwood into the back seat. Langston still smirking, Jeremy pale and silent, and accepted a thermos of coffee from the cook before departing. The village ruffians had been collected at dawn. The sleigh ponies were stabled and fed. Justice, like the thaw, moved steadily. Poirot returned inside. The drawing-room had been restored to order. Furniture righted, cushions plumped, the hearth swept clean of sapphire dust. Lady Angelwood waited by the Christmas tree, the true angel in a velvet box on the table beside her. Mr. Archibald Croft stood at her elbow, catalogue forms already filled. "Everything is arranged," Croft said, adjusting his spectacles. "The British Museum accepts the donation with gratitude. A plaque will read, 'Gift of the Angel Lapwing, Angelwood family, in memory of those who suffered under its legend. The pendant will be cleaned, studied, and displayed in the medieval treasury by Easter.'" Lady Angelwood closed the box. "Let it sing for strangers now. The house is lighter already." Clara Beaumont appeared in the doorway, cheeks flushed from the cold. "The postman just came. First delivery in days. Letters, parcels, telegrams." She handed Poirot a thick cream envelope sealed, with the unmistakable crest of Scotland Yard. He slit it open. Inside, a single sheet. "My dear Poirot, the Angelwood case reaches us even here. Splendid work. The Zurich syndicate is rattled. 2 arrests in Geneva this morning. Your fee is en route via diplomatic pouch. Hastings sends his compliments and asks whether the moustache survived the blizzard. Ever yours." Jap Poirot folded the note with satisfaction. "The little grey cells, they are appreciated even at the Yard." At 11, the remaining guests gathered for a farewell breakfast. Kippers, eggs, toast thick with marmalade, coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Conversation was subdued but not sombre. The weight had lifted. Madame Duval and Elise were dressed for travel. New coats, new valises, railway tickets to Dover, and the boat train to Paris. Dr. Thorne had given the girl a clean bill of health and a bottle of tonic for the nerves. Sophia Vale lingered by the window, a small suitcase at her feet. Jeremy's cottage deed lay unsigned on the mantel. She had refused to accompany him into exile. "I need to find my own legend," she told Clara, voice steady. "One without curses." Reverend Green offered a brief grace, his voice warm with relief. "For what we have survived and what we have learned, let us give thanks." They ate, they laughed, tentatively at first, then with the ease of people who have stared into an abyss and stepped back. Elise fed crumbs to the Manor's ancient spaniel under the table. Madame Duval hummed a French lullaby. At noon the carriages arrived, 2 motor taxis from the village, engines idling like patient horses. Luggage was loaded, Croft's portfolios, Clara's overflowing notebook, Sophia's single case. Poirot's valise was last, George having packed with military precision. Lady Angelwood accompanied them to the steps. She pressed a small parcel into Poirot's hands, brown paper, tied with red string. "For the journey," she said simply. He bowed over her hand. "Madam, you have given me a Christmas I will not forget. The angel flew, but the heart of Angelwood remains." She smiled, truly for the first time. "Come back when the roses bloom. The curse is gone, the welcome is not." One by one they descended. Clara hugged Elise fiercely. Sophia kissed Madame Duval's cheek. Croft shook hands all round. The taxis filled. Poirot paused on the bottom step, the parcel tucked under his arm. He looked back at the manor, stone warmed by sun, windows winking, chimneys no longer smoking secrets. Somewhere inside, the Liber Angeli lay open to a blank page, waiting for a new story. He raised his hat. "Adieu, Angelwood. The mystery is resolved. The miracle begins." The journey south was uneventful. At King's Cross, Poirot dismissed George with instructions to deliver the parcel unopened to Whitehaven Mansions. Only in the privacy of his flat, cocoa steaming beside him, did he untie the string. Inside, a silver thimble, engraved CB, Clara's gift, returned with a note in her looping hand. "For the detective who mended every broken thing. Write the foreword to my novel." Beneath it, wrapped in tissue, lay the melted twist of false gold and glass, the replica's corpse. And beneath that, a single perfect pearl, flawless, luminous. Poirot turned it in the lamplight. No tear, no curse, only the promise of a story retold. He placed it in the small velvet box that had once held the Christmas angel, set the box on his desk beside the green notebook, and allowed himself a smile. Outside, London's bells began to ring for evening service. Somewhere, a child laughed in the street. The city smelled of coal smoke and roasting chestnuts, of life continuing. Hercule Poirot raised his cup. "Joyeux Noël," he murmured to the empty room. "The angel has found its resolution at last."